Our project is coming to fruition. Much that we have planted is established and flowering well. This is Puta Puta weta. Amongst the birds, a species we have not seen before shows up, the tomtit. I think that what we are doing here is making a difference, but that's difficult to assess. Possum control, for example, is far better than when we arrived, and there are more native flowers like this clematis in the bush. But I believe planting a native garden with a superabundance of food has made a difference, especially with so many old trees logged out. The secondary growth forms a dense canopy, and as you get down to the stream, very little light gets in. Down in the gully, there's a waterfall. Getting to see it's not so easy. It's impossibly difficult to get in here, and to get down here I have to go through what looks like really dense tropical rainforest. It took about 15 or 20 minutes. Consequently, nobody ever stumbles down here to have a look at it. Some trees are big enough to hint of the past and are heavily festooned with lily-like epiphytes, their flowers drawing in bumblebees. And the appropriately named lancewood produces a more usual ovate leaf when older, which sadly I still fail to recognise. If it were growing a metre out on the pasture, this young rewa would be killed by winter frosts. Well, this is not an unusual or a rare tree, it's a lemonwood, but it's one that I'm particularly fond of because it's the first tree that I planted around 7.5 years ago, and it's done really well for itself. The gully slopes continue to fill out. The old stock trail that once led down to the stream and along which the children hunted Easter eggs is now impassable. This is a giant Kauri, although it's not very giant at the moment. It's doing very well. I only planted it a few years ago, but a bit further along I broke the golden rule by planting some giant redwoods, non-natives, but I figured on coming back in a few thousand years' time and taking a look at two of the most magnificent trees that the world has ever produced, standing next to one another. It would be great to come this way and make the comparison. The Kauri story is depressing. 150 years ago, the northern Kauri forests ran from coast to coast. In this small remnant forest, a few old trees remain, and despite their huge size, they are not fully grown. The biodiversity of great old trees can be considerable, but Captain Cook was more inclined to recognise their commercial value. The first trees were cut for ship masts, and it wasn't long before European settlers were felling whole forests. This is another species pushed to the brink. A fungus is now infecting Kauri root systems, and if we are to continue visiting them, it may have to be along boardwalks. Giant redwood then. I know, I have to wait a while. It's an indulgence, but I doubt that 3 giant redwoods from the western seaboard of North America, planted in our New Zealand garden, will cause any problems. Here's one that will though. A neighbour is felling a small pine plantation at the edge of his pasture. This is Pinus radiata, a native of California. Paradoxically, it doesn't grow well in its native land. But in the southern hemisphere, this is the commercial tree of choice. In New Zealand it can be cropped in 30 years. But should we perhaps question the quality of a wood that needs to be pumped with poison to inhibit invasion by timber pests? Ecologically, this tree has no redeeming features. At least 35 pests will destroy it in California, none are presently here, but it is only a matter of time. It would be preferable to plant and harvest native trees that belong here, but planting radiata is all about making a profit, and as quickly as possible. One morning I found the site ablaze, assuaging any doubts that I had about collecting remnants for our wood burner. The site burnt and smouldered for several weeks. Trees are frequently felled and dealt with in this manner to increase pasture. Our concerns over our carbon footprint and the trivial quest for energy-saving light bulbs are thrown into perspective.